I've got Ben Emlyn-Jones with me, and that means we are getting into all of my favourite kind of subjects. We talked about disclosure. We talked about the gluttony. There's an absolute plethora, an abundance of shows to choose from out there right now that really are almost giving us some kind of disclosure light. Now, you have to think back to 2017 when there was a literal sea change in the way that the media approached all of these kind of subjects. It went from the crazy, wacky music and making fun of little green men and things like that around the subject of UFO sightings and the like, to now we're having serious interviews with people that have flown aircraft, that have tracked UFOs. David Fravor comes to mind. We've had Tucker Carlson talking to Luis Elizondo, very serious interview, and everything changed. It was like a light switch being flipped. It went from the stuff of conspiracy theory to mainstream. And I've been watching this. Ben's been watching it. Ben mentioned the 2-hour show that we done on this a number of years ago now, I think. We've done so many shows together and we've talked about so many subjects, but what's been going on recently with all of this, A-Tip to the Stars Academy, TV shows like Project Blue Book, it does feel to me like something is going on in the realms of disclosure. Now, before we went to the break, I brought up an article that was talking about Tom DeLonge and To the Stars Academy. And for anyone out there that might not have heard me and Ben talk about this before, if you're into To the Stars Academy, just go and look at the board of directors and look at how many links into government that exist there. And that's why they're a very interesting company, organization, media platform. I don't know what they dress themselves up as, but they seem to be the kind of front man, the go-between government and the people when it comes to this release of information that's going on right now. And Ben, it is interesting times. I couldn't quite find the term that they're referring to the A-Tip program now, but the gist of the article in Vice is that the Air Force, which is interesting because we're talking about Navy videos, right, from the Nimitz and David Fravor and stuff like that, but they're investigating as to how Tom DeLonge ever got these videos in the first place.
Right. Yeah, I mean, this is a remarkable article. Now, I'd never heard of this. And now, it's interesting that they do have a different name for the program. This, I think, lends credibility to it because in these, especially they do this more in America than anywhere else, but they do often change the names of various outfits. I mean, we've already referred to Project Blue Book, originally being called Project Grudge, and before that, Project Sign.
And then if me and you were running something that we didn't want the public to know about, then a really effective way of cutting off any trail that people may investigate would be to change the name, move the goalposts, call it something else. It's a different office, right?
Exactly. It's a fudging operation. It's a way of laundering the secrecy of something, even if it's just semi-secret, like Blue Book. It's a way of laundering that situation so any amateur sleuths find it more difficult to track down. No, but it seems that they are tracking down. This article in Vice here is very interesting, even though I've only just started reading it. Vice, incidentally, are getting well and truly based in the last couple of years because they did an article about targeted individuals, and they even did a documentary about them a couple of years ago, which was actually quite good.
I got interviewed for Vice magazine at one point, Ben, yes, about the rise of the alternative media. Yeah, so I've had my brushings with Vice in the past. They've gone kind of more mainstream. I must admit, some of their YouTube content, it's very, dare I say it, some of it's propaganda. Yeah. I think of stuff based around the white helmets and things like that. But again, usually, for a mainstream kind of publication, they do dip their toe into our topics, right?
I'm quite impressed. I mean, they actually interviewed me at one of the the Basis Project conference as well, and they never actually broadcast the interview. But I was impressed with them, so I was willing to speak to them. I wouldn't speak to Channel 4 or the BBC, but I did speak to these people. Now, it makes sense actually. There would be some kind of investigation because this is something that TTSA have never explained about where this information came from. And of course, this does represent a security breach, even though they have decided not to attempt a suppression of what came out. They are obviously still interested in where it might have come from. And the fact they've chosen the Air Force Office of Special Investigation, that doesn't actually surprise me because they've always been connected to this sort of thing. For example, well, there was an entire, essentially a disinformation project run by a guy called Richard Doty, many years ago. It's a rather disreputable and rather sordid story, but it involves a guy called Paul Benowitz. So it doesn't surprise me that they're actually involved this time. I suppose what could happen as a result of this is that they may end up actually interviewing people like Luis Elizondo and Tom DeLonge and just saying, what have you been up to? Who have you been talking to? Things like that. I just think they just want to find some kind of trail. I mean, I don't think whoever it was who's behind this really, who's probably somebody whose name that we don't know has not come forward. They probably don't have to be too worried because of what's happened with Fravor. And there's been no reprisals, legal or otherwise, against Fravor.
He's been on Joe Rogan. He's been doing like the world tour. And for a whistleblower, if you compare him to the life that Edward Snowden now leads, it's kind of a difference, isn't there?
It definitely. I think that it appears that they're not taking this too seriously. I mean, it doesn't look like they're pursuing this with an intention to prosecute somebody for espionage.
So should we take it seriously, the information we're seeing, Ben?
Well, that's obviously something we have to address. That's an issue we have to address. Is this just is this in itself some kind of double bluff? I don't know is the answer.
And this is the really cool thing, because I think me and you, we're in the future going to do another 2-hour show on the controlled disclosure that's going on, or undisclosure. I don't know what it is. But look, there's something else I want to talk to you about. And one of your listeners have touched base with you on this. It's related because it's to do with the History Channel. Now, I haven't seen the new show that started on there. It's in the US. But it's all about Skinwalker Ranch. Now, there's a new guy who owns Skinwalker Ranch, and his name is Brandon Fugal. Now, Brandon Fugal has been on Coast to Coast with George Knapp, the guy who is pretty famous for bringing out the Bob Lazar story. And I want to take my hat off to George Knapp, because he really has been somebody that's been on the front line of getting some of this information out for years now. But Brandon Fugal, don't know much about the character, Ben. He owns the ranch. But Travis Taylor, now he's been on the Tesla Files, he's been on Oak Island. He's like the go-to scientist for the History Channel, but he's also like a theoretical physicist who is really, really clued up, to the point of he has workings with the Department of Intelligence, government operations, things like that, where he can't talk about some of the things that he speaks about. Defense Intelligence Agency, DIA, I think that's the one he works for. And they're on Skinwalker Ranch, and the show, he was talking with Richard Dolan just before the first episode premiered. He was talking about time anomalies that they were detecting. They were talking about some of the things that's gone on in Skinwalker in the past. And I was wanting to get your thoughts on Skinwalker Ranch, because this is an interesting place without any of the stuff that's going on now with the History Channel. You've had so many things going on there over the years. Bigelow, who's very much connected to the ATIP program that we spoke about before through Senator Harry Reid, he used to own the ranch. This new guy's got it. He's been to Washington to speak to government about the ranch and what they're finding there. He was disappointed that there wasn't a two-way conversation. They basically took his findings and ran off. But what do you make of Skinwalker Ranch, man? Because that's a place that is totally steeped in the woo, right?
Oh, very much so. I mean, it's this is actually very, very famous place. I mean, this is a very, very well. The story begins sort of in the 90s. There was this. It was Ratio Ranch, which is like a livestock farm in Utah, USA, and the family that ran it, the farmers, the ranchers, the Sherman family, basically started reporting the strangest kind of things that you can imagine. It was UFOs, but it was other things as well that were connected. And you often get this with UFOs. You get like a UFO will come along, but other things will accompany it, which are like other forms of paranormal elements, such as you see this at the Point Pleasant, which John Keel investigated. I don't know if you've had Paul Sinclair on your show or his team talking about the Bempton phenomenon and things like this. Skinwalker was very, very similar. And what happened was Bob Bigelow, he's a wealthy philanthropist who's very interested in the kind of things we're interested in. He bought the ranch from the Shermans. I mean, the Shermans stayed on as like tenant farmers to sort of manage it, but Bob Bigelow actually bought it altogether, and did a very, very intense investigation where he got Colm Kelleher and the aforementioned George Knapp to come in and look into this whole sort of thing with a very, very well-funded, very well-organized paranormal research project. Now, I'm very interested to hear that this guy's been on Coast to Coast, because, of course, Bigelow then sold the ranch on to someone else who's always been very, very private, and he hasn't actually said much. All we knew was that he wasn't revealing his name, and that all the roads leading to the ranch were closed, so no one could get in. And any trespassers would immediately be arrested. It was very, very tight security. But now you say this guy has revealed his name and has been on Coast to Coast, which is quite something. And there's this now there's this new series. I mean, I'm really great because there was a movie made about Skinwalker Ranch, which actually wasn't very good. It was a bit of a cheap B movie.
Well, you're like me. You like Richard Dolan, right? Richard Dolan. Yeah. He's quite solid, and he had Travis Taylor on, and it was like just before the premiere of the first episode of this new series. And this physicist, he was sitting there talking about how he couldn't give too much away, obviously, with the show not been aired yet. But he was talking about a 14-second period that cameras had recorded and things, and where he wasn't here anymore. There was like a time slip thing happened, Ben.
Yeah.
And just like you said, right, you get these areas where it's not one thing that happens. It's like a paranormal hotspot. I don't know what's going on at Skinwalker Ranch, and I was listening to you intently there because this is a place I've not really researched. But it sounds to me, and in the little article I sent you there, talks about how this Brandon Fugel has briefed the government on things about what they're finding there. It talks about wormholes and time slips. I was listening to an interview as well where they were basically, and it was Richard Dolan and Travis Taylor talking about, think about the Avengers movies and Loki and things like that, where you've got aliens fighting over a place. And I'm thinking, am I living in the real world here? I mean, this is the History Channel and people on there talking about these things, how aliens are coming to this ranch, possibly time slips going on, something bigger dimensionally. You better believe there's national security implications to that, right?
There must be. It must be like a lot of these other areas, because, I mean, there was definitely some interest. John Keel reports definitely some interest. His phone was tapped and things like that when he was investigating Point Pleasant.
John Keel is one of the most interesting characters in this whole kind of genre I've ever come across, Ben.
Definitely.
He tried to bring a scientific kind of mindset to it. And that Mothman Prophecies is a book that I've spoke about now maybe 100 times. And I'll speak about it 1,000 times more, because there's so much more in there. In fact, it's a disservice to call it the Mothman prophecies because you think you're getting a book about the Mothman, right? But you're
Yeah.
getting a book about so much more. And John Keel's research, well, it definitely ties in with certain areas being almost vortexes, if I want to call it that. They are more akin to this type of thing happening. And Skinwalker Ranch, it's got to be up there in the top 10, right?
It's something very similar. I mean, the book, The Mothman Prophecy, the Mothman, the creature, this winged humanoid creature, was just one. As you said, it's just one of many, many phenomena that occurred at that time in that place, as if something happened at that particular location that made it more susceptible to various paranormal phenomena. And I believe the Skinwalker Ranch is the same. Now, I've never seen this. I've got to watch this series actually, because I mean, I think this listener or viewer or reader might have got in touch with me because they want me to say something about it because they know it's up my street and I haven't mentioned it yet.
This is the kind of thing I would imagine that you would probably do a live stream and review it, Ben.
Oh, as soon as I've got
From what
time,
I've
I
heard
will.
about it, yeah. From what I've heard about it, I've not seen it either. But the Richard Dolan interview, that's worth checking out. And I'm not surprised your listeners have got in touch with you because, yeah, for me, this is right up your street, man.
Yeah, this is obviously the Brandon Fugel, this chap who obviously I think his revelation and sort of coming out of the closet the way he has is probably timed with the release of this particular
Yeah,
TV series
it
because
will
this
be.
he's always guarded his privacy. This chap, Brandon Fugel, he's never. I mean, I knew about him, but I didn't know his name until now.
And now he's on Coast to Coast with George Knapp.
Oh,
They've
go
got a
listen to that
TV
one.
show going on. Very interesting. But I mean, you again going back to the history of this place. I mean, what is this place for you? Is it like a Stargate? I mean, what the hell's going on there?
Well, the term Stargate has often been suggested. It's apparently there are legends associated with it that go back much further. For example, the Ute Indians were regarded that area as cursed. And I mean, the term skinwalker is actually a Native American Indian phrase,
Yeah.
which refers to it refers to basically a possessed an individual possessed as a spirit, which can then transform. You can transform into various different forms, shapeshift. The skinwalkers were like they were like sorcerers that were essentially possessed by a demonic entity, which could cause them to shapeshift into various animals. They could disguise themselves as various other people, things like that. Um, so the very name Skinwalker, the fact it has this name Skinwalker in itself has dark connotations, especially if you are a Native American, definitely. Um, now the phenomena that were captured, the phenomena that were studied, included things like strange animals. It included the strange animals, including ones which are completely out of place. They're outside their normal habitat, and dogs would appear apparently, and a dog appeared near close to the house, and there were the term Stargate. It refers to like some kind of portal between the dimensions, but this was actually witnessed. There was actually almost like someone described a phenomenon of looking down a tunnel. If I can remember, it was years ago I read the book, but they described looking down a tunnel and seeing what looked like a humanoid creature coming along the tunnel, as if they're entering our world.
Wow.
Rather terrifying, wasn't it? Rather terrifying concept. The time shifts and things like that. Now you get this at Point Pleasant as well.
I mean, this is like Stranger Things, right? I mean, this is like an entrance to the upside down that you're describing here,
It's like what people like Paul Sinclair, Chris Turner, and other researchers like that have been talking about. I mean, there are areas like the Bempton area, which is actually.
Talk to us about this because I've not heard of Paul Sinclair before.
Have you not? I'm
No, no,
I'm surprised he's not been on your show yet. I mean,
no.
he and Chris Turner and several other people have been studying a phenomenon at a place called Bempton, which is not far from Hull in the East Riding of Yorkshire. And in fact, I was in Hull a few weeks ago, and I met Paul and a couple of other people, and I've met him at several places actually. And there was several speakers who've been investigating things such as, well, believe it or not, werewolves. And now, again, a werewolf is a figure of mythology, but it's a European, has a European origin rather than, of course, North American Indians have this mythology of the Skinwalker. In the same way, it has a similar status to the European mythology of the werewolf. However, werewolves have been seen in that area. There's a very famous one that's appeared in Hull several times over the last 400 years or so. And it came back actually a couple of years ago. It's known as Old Stinker because apparently it has a very bad smell. But it is literally a humanoid figure with the head of a canine. Exactly like you see in horror films and things like that. Exactly as you see. And there was even a werewolf hunt in 2018. And I was luckily enough, it was happened when I was on the air with the Hapanmo show. So I reported on it live. Someone was like tweeting at me while they were on this werewolf hunt. I think it was just a bit of fun, to be honest, Kev. I don't think anyone was seriously looking for hunting werewolves, but they went along this place called the I thought it was called the Hampton Drain, which is like a canal near Hull, which is not, I say it's not far from Bempton. And this is where the sightings of this beast had been reported. And it was the first time it had appeared since the 1960s, and it was back. Fascinating. I mean, there's a film, I forgot the name of Paul's film now. I've got the DVD of it somewhere. But Paul Sinclair has produced a film about this. He's written several books about this. And Chris Turner has made a film called Elusive about cryptids, about like strange creatures. And all I can say is that maybe that is an area which, I mean, whether the word cursed is the correct word to use, it's certainly charged with some kind of energy. And some people have said it's something to do with the ground, with certain minerals in the ground, crystals and things like that. But it's obvious that our universe is something that is actually much more fluid and much more open than has perhaps people see what it appears to be in our everyday reality. There are holes in it, and it seems to be quite checkered, actually, Kev, certainly in certain areas.
Certainly glitches in the Matrix.
Yeah.
To other worlds. And I've been talking recently, Ben. I've been looking at what other symptoms might be out there that we're in really historic times right now, aside from the big news that we're all dealing with on the planet. And I've noticed, and I'll get your take on this, an uptick in UFO reports. Have you found this?
Yes, I have, very much so. I've noticed far more of them around the place. Now, I don't know if this is because there are more UFOs, literally, physically, or whether it's because there's a lockdown. More and more people are looking up at the sky. They get more time. They go to bed later. They can look up at the sky, spend more time doing these sort of things than they wouldn't normally. It may be a bit of both. I'm not sure. But I mean, I was contacted by a lady I know in Cornwall who sent me this amazing photograph, which was taken by her son. It was taken over the sea off the coast of Cornwall, and so apparently her other son, who lives in another part of Cornwall on the Cornish coast, took a photograph of the same object. And I wrote back to her saying, well, did they know which direction it was in? Because of course then you can triangulate it, you know exactly where it is. And the thing about one of her sons is autistic, and she didn't seem very keen to pursue the matter any further. She just sort of shared it privately with me, so I respected her privacy, and I didn't say any more. But I did recommend she reported it to the Cornish UFO group. Cornwall is another of these places where a lot of weird things happen. In fact, Cornwall, I read somewhere, I think it was Jonathan Downes, who wrote a book all about Cornwall and its strange things that happen there, that it's the most paranormal place in the world. And in terms of all paranormal and strange phenomena.
Is there ley lines there, dude?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like even from the earliest age of the humanity, there seems to have been some kind of special attraction for Cornwall in terms of for spiritual reasons, because there's lots of ancient monuments there. I mean, Britain is an area with lots of prehistoric monuments and very, very rich, especially in the West Country, in the South and the West Country, although it's scattered across the entire British Isles. But Cornwall has many, many strange ones, including like some that are unique to that region. For example, these ring stones. Now, these are stones which essentially there's like a tunnel or ring has been carved through the stone. It's very, very skillfully done. It's in a perfect circle. So the masons who actually created this effect on the stone, the sculptors, really knew what they were doing.
Oh, Ben, I could do shows with you all week long, all
Likewise,
year long. I could listen to you talking for hours, man. I've been telling people in the pre-show stream, you're one of the few people I've met physically in all the madness we do. And this is you, dude. You are like Mulder from the X-Files, you know? And I say that in the most affectionate, kind way possible because you don't just talk about this information. You live all of this.